Welcome to Journey with the Jays. We got Joe, Jake, me, and of course our new member, Gerald. How are we doing tonight, Gerald?
Doing well. Thank you, John.
Gerald, do you want to tell our fans a little bit about yourself, those that don't quite know you yet?
Oh, no worries. I appreciate it. I guess you could say that I host a variety of shows. First off, for the sports world, I do host the Lakers Fast Break, and we're currently doing NBA coverage pretty much every day that we can on the Lakers Fast Break channels, wherever you get your podcasts. If you're into fantasy football, Inside Sports Fantasy Football, Chris Ardieri and I each week cover the latest and greatest news and information for fantasy football. And then the big shows I do are the Pop Culture Cosmos and the PCC Multiverse. Those go around the world on 30 different radio stations. So thankful for that. And we cover the latest news and information there on what's going on with movies, television, and so much more, video games, and the whole 9 yards for pop culture right there at the Pop Culture Cosmos.
I absolutely love your setup that you got there with the Kobe jersey and everything and Shaq.
Absolutely.
That's awesome.
Well, thank you. Thank you. Got the video games and all that. I try to mix a little bit of each of the things that I try to go ahead and podcast about.
Before we start, where can everyone find you? Where can everybody find your work at?
Well, probably the best place to go is popculturecosmos.com. You'll see a little bit of everything, including our shows, plus articles and reviews that both myself and other staff members, including my co-host, either Chris Ardieri, Josh Peterson, or Marcus De La Garza, we all put our stuff there as well. So if you get a chance, check out popculturecosmos.com. It's probably a great place to start.
Yeah, for sure. So everybody go and check that out. So Jake, what sport did you want to start with? What sport did you have in mind?
We can start with hockey if you're going to throw it my way. We'll just start with my sport. It doesn't matter if you want to do it that way. All right,
sure. We'll start with hockey. You can rub the Stamkos, stuff in my face.
Yeah, we'll start with that. Lightning are up 2-0 right now. Game 3. So to backtrack a little bit, last week, I believe the series started before our last show. So I think the series started before that last show. So we had only covered just a little preview. So the Lightning dropped game 1 to the Stars 4-1, and then we had the Lightning pull out game 2, 3-2, a close contest. So it is 1-1 going into today. And we are currently in the first period of the game as we speak, of game 3, about halfway through that period. And it is 2-0 Lightning. However, Dallas is on the power play. But what John was talking about is something I wanted to rub in his face just a little bit. I believe it was maybe last week. We were talking about Steven Stamkos, Lightning's captain. We weren't sure if he was going to come back for this series. The Lightning had been very cautious about it, and he came back today. He's back in the lineup today, and he scored the second goal today to make it 2-0 for the Lightning. So Stamkos already making an impact. So first of all, I want to throw it John's way because I want to hear what John has to say, because I know, John, you were skeptical. You were a little worried maybe he's not going to make the right impact right away because he hasn't played in so long. I'm sure you haven't gotten to watch it, but just what are your initial thoughts? He's already out there and scoring now.
Well, that's obviously great. For you to rub it in my face, he didn't score the go-ahead goal. So if they would win 2-0, and we just lost JB.
That's all right. He'll be back.
If it was 2-0, the game ended up being 2-0, then he wouldn't get the game winner. So really that impact wouldn't make that big of a difference. So we got to wait and see how the rest of the game pans out. If they win 2-0, then it doesn't matter. And who knows how fatigued he's going to be, how long he can last on shifts. So we got to wait and see how this game affects him the rest of the series,
of course,
if he can continue to go. So it's all kind of a wait and see approach with Stamkos, but so far so good if you're a Lightning fan, and if you're a Stars fan, I couldn't have gone worse to start tonight.
Yeah, look, John, I'm messing with you, but in all seriousness, it's great to see him back out there. He's been out for so long with the pandemic and his injuries previously, so it's really great to see him out there. But one thing I want to touch on that I'm really looking forward, hopefully, to seeing in this game is, yes, the Lightning have won the last game. And yes, the Lightning are up 2-0 in this game, but the thing is about this Stars team, which I love so much, is they are so resilient. The last game they were down, I believe at one point, they were down 3-0. There's JB. So the Lightning down 3-0 in the last game, and they scored one goal in the second and the third period, and nearly tied it up in that third period. So for me, that's something I love to watch with this team, and that's why I know a lot of people might see, 2-0. That's a deficit. For me, I don't see that with the Stars, and I want to hear what you guys think so far of these first two games. How you think the two teams are matching up? Whoever wants to go first can go ahead.
I guess I will. So tonight, right now, it's 2-0. You said in the game, 2-0 is the most dangerous lead you can have in hockey.
Mm-hmm.
As we know, 2-0 is never a fun lead to have. It's great to have the lead, but it's always a dangerous lead. So, yes, we got to wait and see, like I said. But it's far from over. The series is far from over. I think they're going 7. They're going to match each other, blow for blow. But you also, like you said with Stamkos, you always like to see their best players out there for whatever series you have.
I hate to cut you off, but it is now 2-1. Jason Dickerson, I believe, is who scored the goal for the Stars. So there you go, blow for blow. The Lightning are up 2-1. We're up 2-0. Now they're up 2-1 because of that. And now, John, we can say for the time being, at least, Stamkos' goal is the go-ahead goal.
It's the game-winning goal right now.
I think this series is good.
Think Jerry or JB?
I think it's going to be a great series. I'm not too concerned. I mean, that's why you went up 2-0. So when they get a goal back, you still got a goal lead. So I don't buy into the 2-goal being the worst lead in any hockey game.
Well, I think Dallas. I'm here in Vegas. We obviously we're very excited about where the Golden Knights were going again this year. Dallas played better throughout their series and took it to the Knights. But right now, I think they're playing a little bit above their heads. Obviously, Tampa Bay is the heavily favored coming into the series. And so far from what I'm seeing, not only in today's game, because I've got that here while we're playing, while we're talking, I'm really just very interested to see how this plays out, because I know you said, John, that you said 7 games, and I want to see if the Dallas Stars, as the underdog, can really stay with Tampa Bay all the way through. I had said already that I thought Tampa Bay was going to win in 6, but that was just the feeling I was getting, because I just think the longer the series goes, the more flaws are going to stick out. And Dallas, which had such great goaltending in the series against the Knights, I don't know if that's going to hold up for the entire series here. I mean, we're already seeing a 2-1 lead early, actually midway in the first period. So I want to just say right now, I think over the long haul, talent is going to weigh out, and I think Tampa Bay is going to win in 6.
Yeah, I'd have to agree with that. I feel like not only just the talent, but I also just get the feeling from the Lightning. This is something I know, but I think this is going to be a factor in the end. They have that experience. They've made more deep playoff runs. A lot of those guys on this roster themselves, whether it be with Tampa Bay or with other teams, guys like Shattenkirk and McDonough, they've been on the Blues and the Rangers respectively. So they've had their deep runs on their own respective teams. And in the end, I get the feeling that that's going to be what really pushes the Lightning over the edge. I love the resilience of the Stars, but I'm with Gerald on this one. I think the biggest issue that we're going to see is this Stars team is probably going to get tired, but more importantly, just the Lightning have a little bit more of that experience factor. They know how to push themselves farther, especially when it's this deep in the playoffs, which is where you really got to dig your deepest. And I'm worried for the Stars' sake. As much as I love watching them, I think they've put up a fantastic fight. And I get the feeling that inevitably they're just not going to dig as deep as the Lightning might be able to.
As I mentioned, remember last week, I said that Hudobin is a hot and cold goalie. So being a Carolina Hurricanes fan, used to be a Hurricane, and like I said, I mentioned this last week, but he goes on extremely hot streaks. He goes on extremely cold streaks, and you can trust him, and then you don't know who he is, and he'll give up 3 goals in the first period, and you yank him. That's the guy he is. And against the Lightning, like we talked about last time, that's hard. It's hard to survive against a team like the Lightning when you have a guy that's streaky. And I think the Lightning eventually will wear out the Stars. I think that's what we're getting at, is the Lightning eventually will just wear them down with all their speed and that just that tires you out after a while.
Oh, absolutely. I'm right with you. I just the Lightning are overall on paper for sure a better team. And it's nothing against the Stars, but again, that experience for me is going to be one of the biggest things that I get the feeling will push them over. And they be close this year, especially so close to winning more than one Stanley Cup, where they were in the final and they should have won it, or deep in the playoffs and they should have advanced and likely won a cup. So for me, that's something that's going to be a huge factor. And if Stamkos, now again, we don't know how it's going to play out. If he continues to play the way he's going to play, hopefully, at that level that he can be, that can another be a huge thing. That's huge for the Lightning when you really think about it, because the Lightning, all the players for the most part are at the point where they're tired. That's what happens. You're deep in the playoffs, and yes, they did have a lot of rest with that extended break, if you want to call it. But still, the playoffs are very tiring, and no matter what, they're going to get tired. So Stamkos is going to be not only a fresh bolt of energy, so to speak, for the team, but it's just going to be, it's just going to be a huge boost in general, because not only do you have a guy that's fresh, he's in a position that he's ready to go out there, and he's had this time to mentally prepare as well. He's also just not physically drained because he hasn't been out there for so long now, which again, that's something I'm also looking for. I'm looking forward to seeing what happens with him, because he's off to a strong start tonight, and it's early, so anything can happen. But that could be something that inevitably, pushes them over the edge and enables them to win this series. And especially if it goes 6 or 7 games, where, like I said, a lot of the guys would be at that point ready to drop dead.
So I have a question.
Yeah, go
on, JB.
No, I mean, I think that's a huge factor. I mean, you're not talking about, a random guy coming back. You're talking about one of the better players in the NHL. When he comes back, he's going to lead his team. That's what he gets paid to do. You're not talking about a random third-line player. You're talking about the star of the team, Stamkos. Go ahead, John.
So I was curious, just kind of a different topic a little bit. Do we know when the NHL plans on starting next year for next season?
Well, I think that's up for debate for almost all the sports leagues right now, because we're seeing so much influx. NBA keeps pushing things back. NHL, I think a lot of them gauge or were gauging a lot off of what the NBA was doing. And the NBA's going into the bubble. Let's do a bubble too, and things of that nature. So we saw a little bit of that. Now everybody's starting to talk about, okay, how are we going to structure out next year? So I know NHL plans are not definite yet. Remember, you also have to go through the players' union and things of that nature. So I know even with the NBA, they had talked about it December 1st. Now it could be, it might even be Christmas or beyond. So we don't even know for sure.
I saw something today with the NBA. Was thinking January. And possibly fans. So, but that changes daily and weekly, depending on what the latest news is. And, that like Jerry said, you got to still negotiate with the union before it even becomes official.
Yeah, I was going to say, for the NHL, Gary Bettman, I think it was today or maybe yesterday, it was just the past few days, he said that they're looking December, but it very well could be January. A lot of it depends on obviously how the playoffs go, and then how the virus. He was talking about how the virus might act up. He's really not sure how that's going to go. So they're really not sure. They have the time frame of what the NBA seems to have as well, which is later into this year, like at the very end, maybe December, maybe early next year. But no definite plans as far as I know yet. I
mean, they're 2 weeks ahead of what the NBA is doing right now, because they're already in the Stanley Cup Finals and all that. So the NBA Finals probably won't end. Let's say even if it goes 4 games, probably won't end till early October. So you're seeing a situation where that 2 weeks, a buffer at least, could be even more, could be even as much as 3 weeks, could allow you to start your season with a decent enough time turnaround where maybe the end of this year, whereas the NBA, I think JB's right, it could very well lean into January.
Yeah, because you still have to have training camp, the draft, and everything else. So you got a lot to get through.
Draft is of now, November 18th. It was moved to. So,
Not to mention, you also have free agency that players they get their right to free agency. They earn their right to players they're on their first year of free agency and other players that are looking forward to those new deals. They have to get an opportunity to see what the market is going to bring to them when it comes to what their worth is. So you have to, give them the entire opportunity to field offers and things like that. Like you said with the draft, teams have to resign players, they have to take their time. So that stuff takes time. The off season takes a lot of time.
It's
that's
usually
why
a long time.
Yeah, that's why it goes from June till about September for all of that stuff, and then October is when they typically start. So
they're gonna have to condense. That's for sure.
How they're going to run the season next year, because we still don't know what's happening with the whole COVID thing. Is there a vaccine? Are the case levels down?
Well, that was one of the things that Bettman talked about. He's just not sure how that's going to go. That's going to be a huge factor.
Yeah, because safety is paramount. If you can't have your players safe and your staff safe, how you first can even think about putting fans in the stands where you make your money?
I mean, we're already seeing the effects of that with the Kansas City game, the first Thursday game that they had, where somebody went there, tested positive next day, and you had like 15, 20 people, I think, that were quarantined because of it. So, yeah, that's not a good PR move. So I don't think the NHL can, withstand a really big PR hit like that if it was like even more than that. I mean, now it's like under the radar. It went by on yesterday's news, but if it was something to a larger extent that emanated from it, then you got real trouble.
Because right now
it could be a lot worse.
Right now they're succeeding, but only because they're in bubbles. They're not traveling from city to city. They're not going, to each arena. It's just they're in the bubble right now. So they haven't even, the NBA and the NHL haven't even gotten to traveling. Whereas the NFL, it's working currently. In the MLB, it's kind of been working.
It's been doing better.
But
college football, it's like,
yeah.
Yeah, it's scary to even think about college football. I mean, the Notre Dame game got canceled. Some teams are having a ridiculous amount of cases, and then you got the league.
You have the leagues that wanted to go ahead and start next year. Now they want to both, like the Pac-12 and the Big Ten. They all want to come back, and it's like,
it's a really want to do that.
Well, except for Stanford. Stanford refuses to play because they think if there's not people in the classrooms, then why should there be people in the stadiums or any of their sporting events? So they refuse to play. So now you got to have one less conference with one less powerhouse team in it. So it's
the Pac-11.
The Pac-11. So.
Well, I don't know if I call Stanford a powerhouse team right now either, but still, it's still not a good look.
When it comes to prestige, they're a prestigious school.
Oh, definitely. But
the Big Ten doesn't want to change its name no matter how many teams they got. So maybe the Pac-12 can.
But if you're gonna delay the season, and say, okay, we're gonna play in the fall or the spring. I mean, stay in the spring. Don't come back 3 weeks later and say, oh no, we're gonna start around Thanksgiving. Stick with what you agree, or unless something changed that drastically, which I didn't see any changes. So I don't know what prompted them besides public pressure to make that decision.
I was going to say pressure of other people doing it. That's what it is.
Yeah.
They see success stories. They see success stories that some teams are able to get away with it. But then they see, they don't choose to see the other schools out there that are having problem in their dorms where this virus just seems to spread like a hotcake, just like that. Get like 10, 15, 30 these kids, just infected all within a short period of time. And you have the situation right now where it's very serious when it concerns college football, whether or not you want to go ahead and just put everybody out there. But I just don't think that the NCAA is prepared for it. I don't think the NCAA has enough resources, no matter how much we like to say that they do. The NCAA just does not want to share its resources enough to go ahead and provide a safe platform for the entire nation of college football. So I don't know. If I was in the Pac-12, I would just say, you know what? I'll wait until this thing blows over.
And I think a lot of these, like you said, the NCAA, the pressure was they saw the dollar signs flying out the window. They saw the NFL making money, the MLB making money, all these, leagues making money. And they're like, well, we got to start making money too. Let's push this. Let's make this happen. So that's kind of, it's kind of what the NCAA does, but that's another story.
Yeah. So a little bit of NHL news, just a tiny bit more, and then we'll move on to Jerry. I know you have some basketball stuff for us. We'll come to you in a second. Just some award stuff. No surprises here, but for anybody watching that hasn't seen it, figure I'll let everybody know. The Calder Trophy for best rookie, Colorado Avalanche, Cale Makar. Not a surprise. He was arguably the best rookie. I mean, 50 points, and I believe it was 50-something games. A fantastic start to his career. And then Leon Draisaitl won 2 awards. He won the Hart Trophy for the MVP, which to me is in no way a surprise whatsoever. And then also the Ted Lindsay, which is also the MVP, but that's voted by his peers. Draisaitl, an insane season, 43 goals and 67 assists for 110 points. Look, there were some other guys that were great out there. It wasn't even close. To me, he did the most for his team by any standards. And then the Vezina went to Connor Hellebuck of the Winnipeg Jets. Again, to me, not even a real contest. He had 21-5. His record in, I believe it was like 30 games. He was 31. He was insane. He was unbelievable. He had a 257 goals against average, which is also unbelievable. Save percentage of 922 with 6 shutouts. Unbelievable. He was just fantastic season. So kudos to everybody that won. And I think that's about it for the NHL. So, Jerry, what do you got for us in the NBA?
Well, it starts off with obviously what I cover on a regular basis on my podcast, and that's the Los Angeles Lakers. Although we do cover the NBA, NBA draft, and more, but it is obviously the title of the show. So I'll start off with the Lakers. A lot of Lakers fans are nervous.
We just don't care.
Yes. Well, a lot of Lakers fans are nervous right now because obviously last night's performance, where they just basically for most of the game got their heads handed to them. And made a strong comeback, but ran out of gas. And I was talking with you guys before the program, and we were, talking about what were some of the key factors why the Lakers were not able to go ahead and just run this thing through, even though you have LeBron, you have AD. I think it's just a matter of just relying too much at times on them. I mean, it took so much energy for them just to get back into the game. If they're not playing at an elite level, they are susceptible. If you make them go and play a half-court offense, they are extremely susceptible. I mean, they're based off of rebounding, defense, and transition. And if they are really clicking on all 3 of those counts, they're the best team in basketball. And when you limit them to a half-court offense, then you see some cracks and some signs, because then you have to rely on other individuals. And this team bases itself off of momentum. So I want to ask you guys this. JB, I'll ask you first. Your thoughts on the series right now. I still think, as I'm going to say on the record, since the Lakers from the very beginning have been my choice for the NBA Finals to win it, I'm still saying they're going to win. They're not. It's not going to be easy, but when it comes down to it, what are you seeing out of the series so far?
So I mean, Denver's doing what I expected them to do. They're playing tough. I don't think that they're going to beat the Lakers. I didn't think they were going to beat the Clippers, which kudos to them for that. But I don't see LeBron with the same type of attitude as we had the whole discussion on Paul George last week. LeBron is all about winning. Every game to him is about winning. There's no such thing as, we lost. It wasn't a championship year. The only thing that scares me watching the Lakers throughout the season, they start falling in love with the 3-point shot when they get in that half-court game. And that's a big problem. I see them, lose big leads because they start settling rather than moving the ball inside or to the open guy.
That's correct. Couldn't have said that better myself. I mean, obviously there are points of time where they pack the paint and do not allow LeBron to go ahead and penetrate, which he loves to do the most. And that's because they want to go ahead and say, you know what, go ahead, try to beat us from the outside. And so far in the bubble, for the most part, it has worked. The Lakers have shot a better percentage than they did in the seeding games or during the regular season. But there are times like yesterday where it just doesn't click and it just doesn't work. And you leave it up to guys that are just not having that momentum and that lift to go ahead and help them get them through. And This comes to a supporting cast. Yesterday, Denver had the great supporting cast of Jeremy Grant and Monte Morris hitting shots right and left, along with what obviously Jokic and Murray were doing. But John, let me ask you this now. Your outlook for the rest of the series. I mean, Denver, they're a team that you cannot underestimate. They're a team that obviously, for reasons which you've seen the first 2 rounds, really have a no-quit value in them. It's something that we rarely see before in these teams. I mean, they don't understand the meaning of quit. And I think that if the Lakers continue to be overconfident, you're going to see more and more errors come out.
Yeah, I agree with you on that. I'm kind of looking at the series right now as the Nuggets have a 2-1 series lead. Now, I know the Lakers do, but if you're the Lakers, you just got your butt handed to you last night. You should have lost game 2. You had a miracle finish in game 2. So really you should be down 2-1. So I'm thinking, if I'm the Lakers, if I lose the next game and it becomes 2-2, it's almost like the Nuggets beat you in all but game 1. And me, mentally, I would think, guys, we got to get it together, because if it's 2-2, obviously the Nuggets would have all the momentum riding. They would have back-to-back games plus game 2 that they should have won. I think if the Nuggets win tomorrow, the Nuggets can win this series. I think if the Nuggets tie it up 2-2 tomorrow, or whenever the next game is, I don't know when the next game is.
It is tomorrow.
How they do their schedule. Tomorrow, okay. If they tie it up 2-2, I think the Nuggets end up winning this in 7. I really do. As talented as the Lakers are, this Nuggets team doesn't give up, and they wear you down. That's the thing. They wear you down with Jokic, however you say his name, Jokic. My gosh, I can't say his name.
How about that?
Yeah. But I think that they wear you down, and it's kind of like the Kansas City Royals when they won their World Series back in 2014 when they beat my Orioles in the ALCS. It was the team that you didn't expect to be, proving everybody wrong every round, and they got to the World Series and they ended up winning it. This is kind of what the Nuggets are doing, where they just keep proving everybody wrong. They were down 3-1. They were down, big in this series, and then they got one last night. They were down 2-0. They went and got one. And even if the Lakers go up 3-1, the Nuggets have that in their back pocket of, hey, we already came back from 3-1 twice. Why not do it again?
What we keep joking about.
And they got they're playing with house money.
That's what we keep joking about, that the Nuggets want the Lakers to go up 3-1, because then they'll say, you know what, we've got you right where we want you. But Jake, I wanted to ask you this before we head on to the other, the other Celtics Heat, and I know John wants to talk about that because it's going on right now, and he's probably got that right there to the side of him as we're watching. But Jake, let me ask you this. Rebounding was such a key factor to me in this series, and it shows to me the initiative as far as the desire, the wanting, the energy, which gets so talked about sometimes ad nauseum in the NBA. Oh, this team had more energy. Oh, this team had more energy, blah, 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 blah. But I want to ask you this, Jake. I mean, in this case, I will tell you this right out the bat, that the Lakers did not have the energy until it was too late. Mm-hmm. And, do you see the fact that whoever has the energy throughout the rest of the series is going to take it all the way?
I always say that for any sport, but yeah, absolutely. I mean, we talked about that with hockey earlier. For me, it's momentum, which is part of energy. When you have that energy, that's where you get those are intertwined. You have momentum that gives you more energy, so to speak, because you feel like you're stronger, you're better because you're mentally there. And that's a lot of it. So yeah, absolutely. For me, it's always going to come down to who wants it more. And that is, again, just intertwined with, who has the energy, so to speak. That's, for me, always intertwined, because when you have that drive, you have that want, that will to win, that is what the energy is, because energy is not just a physical thing, which I think people kind of forget about. That's a really mental thing. These games are more mental than anything. So for me, that's what it comes down to. And right now, even though I know John was talking about, even though the Nuggets are losing, they have looked like they want it more. I think, and it might be because maybe they're the underdogs in the series, and that might be part of what's fueling them. Or maybe it's the 3-1 series, deficit that they overcame. Maybe that's what it is, and it's maybe that they were the underdogs last series and they overcame it. It could be a lot of things, but they look like they are really determined to win. And it's not to say that the Lakers and LeBron and AD don't look that way, because I would say that's not fair to them. That's not true. But I get that feeling a little bit more right now. I get that drive, that will to win right now not from the Lakers, sadly, which for you, I'm sorry to say, but for me,
I want to hear it honestly. I want to hear fluffed up stuff. I want to hear it straight up.
But yeah, no, for me, so that's just for me. I think the drive is not there, but it's just not as in full force. And for me, that's what wins a series no matter what. I've been saying that for every playoff series we've talked about, whether it be hockey or basketball now throughout the show. I continue to say it. That is what wins series for me, is getting hot, getting motivated, and that all kind of works into one big thing. And that's for me what it's going to be. And if the Lakers don't pick it up, if they don't really start to get that energy and they start playing with more intensity, like they really fight to want the game, they're not going to win this series. Even though I do get the feeling they'll pull it out, they're going to have to start playing with more intensity, more passion, more of that drive, I guess, is really what I'm looking for.
I agree with you wholeheartedly on that. And this comes from someone I've been on, a ton of shows during the course of the past couple months. And not only I've had a lot of guests like you, JB, have been on the show, and we've talked about that. I mean, we've had so many people vote against the Lakers. I'm getting used to it as far as it's concerned, because, whether they have usually, hopefully it's not because they have a disdain for LeBron. But John, I know you got the game going on with Miami and Boston. Did you want to interject with something before we hit up your series? Because sure enough, it's a close game. What are the odds of Miami and Boston playing a close game right now?
This series has been so fun to watch. Just not even as a Heat fan, just as a basketball fan, it's been such a fun series to watch. I mean, both series have actually been a lot of fun to watch, surprisingly. Yeah. So I've been happy about that. Good basketball on both sides. But
so is Adam Silver. He's going like this.
Yes, he is. And the NBA, I commend the NBA and the NHL for how almost perfect. It's almost been a perfect job by the both of them in handling the COVID stuff, the bubble, everything that's come their way with this, which nobody can expect what to expect. They've handled it almost perfectly, both leagues, NBA and NHL. So, first of all, kudos to both leagues on that. And we're talking about Heat now. To me, I know the Celtics had a big lead in all the games, all 3 games they had a big lead. But to me, should it really take Marcus Smart yelling at the team in the locker room and leaving the locker room after he beat them the first 2 games? Should it take that just to get them fired up enough to where they play basically a perfect game, almost a perfect game in game 3? To me, I don't see as much heart from the Celtics. It took kind of like when the Raptors won the first game of their series off of their miracle. It shouldn't take that in the playoffs to get to that point. The Lakers shouldn't be messing around. It shouldn't take that. Shouldn't take, somebody coming out and yelling or whatever. It shouldn't take that for these teams to get fired up. They should be there. The Heat have shown the fight, and the Nuggets have shown the fight essentially every game in their series. They've shown the heart and the fight, and that's why I think the Heat are the better team right now over the Celtics. And they're going to go back and forth. They've been trading blows the entire series, but the Celtics
that series has 7 games written all over it.
But the Celtics haven't shown any heart aside from game 3, but they basically had to play a perfect game, to get back in the series. You're not going to get that every night. That's why I see the Heat, not folding. I don't see the Heat folding in this series. I see them still winning this series ultimately.
Well, I just see with Miami. I'll just say this. I'll just see with Miami. They're my pick for 7. And I just wanted to say why is because they have more versatility. more players that can give you consistent scoring, not the once in a 5 or 7 game stretch you get 15 or 20. I'm talking about you've got more consistent scorers that can get you buckets, and that's something that no other team in the bubble has right now. So
yeah, I want to go back to what John said, because I agree. That goes back to exactly what I was saying. It's all about the heart. It's all about the want and the will to win. And again, that's why when the series started, I picked the Heat to win this, just because maybe it's partially that underdog mentality for them, but it's just they've had the will to win with this series and the series before it. It doesn't seem to faze them that they're the underdog and that they're supposed to lose. And that's, for me, that's the biggest thing. And they showed it in those first 2 games. No matter how big the lead was for the Celtics, they don't care. And it was the same thing in the last year. It doesn't matter to them. They go out there and they have this ferocity that they're gonna not give up, which is what I love in a team. No matter what, you could be down by 100, and they give me the feeling if they're down by 100, they're gonna claw their way back with every single point and do their darndest best to win the game. And I love that about them. And for me, that's why I have them winning, because I said it before and I'll keep saying it over and over and over again. Heart and will to win is all it takes to win a series, because you can have the best players together, but if they don't have that drive, that heart, it doesn't matter.
Well, I'll tell you this. I'll just leave it this before I hit JB up with one last question on the Bulls, and that is this. When it comes to the Celtics, they need Tatum and Brown to play at an elite level in order to go ahead and finish the series, whereas the Heat have so many viable options. They don't need Jimmy Butler each and every game. And I think that's probably the key factor of why I think Miami is going to win a 7, is because they can have different performers step up. Goran Dragic, Robinson hit you 6, 7, 8 threes. You see Bam Adebayo get you 27. So I see these things out of Miami that I don't see from Boston, which ultimately I think that's going to be the reason why they're going to squeak out in the series. But it's going to be close either which way, and I think it could go easily in the favor of Boston if Tatum plays at that elite level.
Mm-hmm.
Go ahead, John.
Yeah,
and I mean, we've talked about it the past couple of weeks. He'd have the best coach left out of the 4 teams. The best coach. He has championship experience. He's been to 4 NBA finals.
Are we ever going to stop with this, John?
I'll give you the championship pedigree. I'll give you that. I don't know about the best coach, because they're all great coaches. So at this point, you shouldn't get out coached. You should be able to go ahead and provide enough X's and O's that you're going to be able to put your team in a position to win. So I don't know. I just want to go ahead and JB, your thoughts real quickly on Billy Donovan to the Bulls.
I think it's a good move. They definitely had to go in a different direction. He was great at Florida, did a nice job at OKC, especially this year where they weren't expected to do anything. They had a nice season. They put together really well. And, I think he's a good fit in Chicago. I think he's going to do well there.
I hope he does well, but I don't know. When it comes to the talent there, it's kind of shaky. So that's what I think you have a lot of talent that have underperformed so far in the NBA. They're young talent still for the most part, but I think they need to go ahead and look at the front office first before they go ahead and really advance as an organization. I think that has been a very much maligned front office, and I think they really need to go ahead and evaluate that first before they go ahead and say, you know what, we're ready to take the next step. Guys,
something I found interesting actually about the Billy Donovan signing was he had his chance to go and coach Zion. He had his chance to go after the Pelicans. He had a chance to go after the Sixers with all their talent. But I think that he turned all those teams, essentially, he bypassed on those jobs because he didn't want to be overshadowed by Zion. He didn't want to be in the mess. He didn't want to be in the mess that is Philadelphia, which is absolute train wreck. I think they've just all that talent, and it's a disaster. I think, and I heard this today as well, and I believe it. He's going to be given the chance to really build the team that he wants and kind of take that team in the direction that he wants. And I don't think he was really going to get that anywhere else, where he could really, build that team from the inside out. I think he's going to get that opportunity. And I think that's probably what he wants. So he's going to get that in Chicago, and he's really not going to get that because they already have a structure in New Orleans, and they already have kind of sort of a structure in Philly. So I think Chicago is a good place to kind of build from the inside out with a history of winning there.
Absolutely. I mean, I still think that they need to improve things in the front office realm, but Billy Donovan's a good coach. He's been able to go ahead and bring along young talent before. So I think he can do that same thing again in Chicago. They still need to work on some things, but yeah, the future's looking a little bit better in Chicago for the Bulls. That's all I have for the NBA right now.
Well, just real quick with the NBA, I mean, just in general, the young stars that the NBA has put on just in the bubble and throughout this season, the NBA is in great shape. This may be the best I remember seeing the league with the influx of young stars on almost every team. What do you think about that?
28 and under. 28 and under. I mean, you can just count by the dozens a lot of the players that have stood out so far. And then right now we're seeing it in Denver with Jokic and Murray. AD, who could potentially become the best player in the league, is 27. So there's so many great players right now. Miami has their own share of youth right there for you. And of course, the Celtics, need I digress, when you have Tatum and Brown, a future possibly first team All NBA, forward tandem. I mean, you have so many players right now. You said it, JB. Just the future is looking extremely bright. And of the 4 different sports, I think the future looks best for them. But again, it all depends on how they're marketed. And that's up to Adam Silver and the rest of the league on how they're going to go ahead and do that. Because, it's all about the marketing. I mean, you can have the greatest stars in the world, but if you don't push them right, or if you don't put them in a platform to succeed to a worldwide audience, it doesn't mean that much.
Do you think that the NBA was actually in this good of a shape recently, but the Golden State Warriors kind of overshadowed that, and now these other players kind of get to shine now that the Warriors aren't in all the spotlight, winning a championship year after year after year, and everything is about the Warriors versus LeBron. Now that the Warriors, at least for a year, have stepped out of the way, you see other players shine, other teams shine in the conference finals. I mean, I don't mind the Warriors, but you see more players and more opportunities for other teams now that the Warriors, at least for a year, are out of the way.
Well, you could say they weren't ready for it because, again, they're all young. So obviously they weren't ready in case of Murray at 20, at 21. Devin Booker, I mean, he's a young star ready to break out. I mean, there's so many different stars that are now ready to break out that probably weren't ready to break out during the dynasty years, quote unquote, of what you want to say, whether or not it's a dynasty of the Golden State Warriors in Cleveland, where it was every year LeBron versus Steph. They weren't ready. So now that you don't have Golden State there and LeBron is now with the Lakers and reaching that point where he is going to be less and less effective going forward, but still be at that level. I mean, my gosh, for somebody that's 36, how much more can he stay at that elite level? You don't know. But these other players are growing and maturing and ready to take that mantle right now at the best possible time. I think it worked out great for the NBA because they weren't ready 2-3 years ago, but they're ready now.
No, definitely. I mean, it's amazing when you look. There's at least 10 or more plus stars under 28 that I just can't wait to see who turns out to be the best. It's pretty exciting.
Absolutely, very much so. But I know I know I've hogged the floor with.
It's all good.
Yeah, I mean, my fantasy team for football is kind of hurting right now with Saquon Barkley. Ouch, ouch, ouch. So I know there's a lot of stuff you guys want to talk about for NFL and MLB going forward. So I appreciate you guys talking to me about the NBA.
It's all good.
Let's
what do you want to
do? Some football.
You want to do football? All right, I guess.
Yeah, we'll go football, and then we'll take a break
right
before we talk about fantasy. So what happened this week with all the injuries? I mean, Saquon went down. Half of San Francisco went down, and they got to travel back to MetLife Stadium because of the rules this year. They couldn't stay out east.
Which sucked for them.
Christian McCaffrey has a high ankle sprain. That's going to be a killer for the next 4 to 6 weeks.
Tyrod got his own doctor punctured his lung while treating him for the cracked ribs. So, I mean, it was just a multitude of injuries. Now, do we think this had to do with the lack of preseason games and a different type of training camp? Or is this just NFL football? What do you guys think?
For me, I think it's the lack of the preseason. They had to get ready what felt like ridiculously quick. And more importantly, they didn't get to play against other teams. You've heard, I believe, other players have said it, and I know former players have mentioned it. It's one thing when you play against your own teammates in different colored jerseys. That's one thing. But when you line up against guys that you don't know as well as your own teammates, right? You line up against another team, even if it's preseason, it's a whole nother feeling. It's a whole different ball game when you're out there against them. So that combined with the fact that they really just had to get ready really quickly, what it felt like. I mean, training camp was what felt like, like that. It was like a blink of an eye, and it was done already. We were, done with training camp and already into the regular season. So that's the other thing for me is usually you have a longer training camp that goes into preseason because that preseason is still extra time for them to continue to get ready. The players are they're really at the point where they would realistically probably be for the end of their training camp preseason time. That's where their timelines are in terms of how long they've probably been out there. That's kind of where they're at now. And so they're really pushing themselves to try and be ready for the season when in reality they're normally not ready this quickly, at least. And I think that's kind of hurting them for now.
Oh, definitely. What do you think about that, Jerry?
Well, I couldn't agree with you more on that because you're seeing a lot of these injuries. Now, maybe Saquon's issue, and if you saw the replay, that's one of those football injuries where you can just put your foot on the turf the wrong way and boom, there it goes. But
absolutely,
you're seeing a lot of these other soft tissue injuries, as they're calling it, usually in these type of situations where they're just not either prepared or stretched or whatnot. You're seeing a lot of those injuries now. I was expecting to see a lot of that on the NBA, and fortunately we didn't get to see that as much in the NBA or NHL, but I am seeing it, I think, as far as preparedness in the NFL. I know we take these exhibition games for granted. I know that a lot of people don't like them. They're just going through the motions, things of that nature, but it's the training camp that surrounds those exhibitions that really gets these teams prepared health-wise to take on the season, and I don't think we got to see that fully take place, and I think that that's going to be an issue going forward that they need to address. Yeah, we're here, John. So I just think that, I agree with you, Jake, that a lot of these other injuries, like you said with San Francisco and a lot of the other ones out there, that they are indeed possibly or most likely because of the lack of preparedness for a lot of these NFL teams.
John, any thoughts?
Yeah, I agree with you on that. I think that baseball was rushed back too, but baseball is not necessarily it's not a contact sport like the NFL is. You're not going 100 miles an hour, flying at a guy as you saw a Diggs from the Seahawks get ejected. That hit on N'Keal Harry Sunday night. He got ejected for that. You're not getting that in baseball. You're just not getting that, and nobody can prepare for a hit like that. But like you said, in the off season, they didn't get hit, so your body wasn't prepared. Because when you take that first hit, your body's like, okay, now I know what it feels like to get hit. You always know, but I've played a lot of football.
It's a reminder.
Until you get hit for the first time after being off for a while, you don't remember what it's like to get hit. When you get hit the first time,
it's like a rude awakening.
So the first time you're getting hit was week 1. It wasn't in preseason and all off season. It was week 1. And like you said, that kind of leads to a lot of injuries, and it's only going to get worse, I think, because I think there's going to be more, unfortunately. I hate seeing any injuries to any player in any sport because they work so hard to get where they're at. Then I saw something on Facebook or Twitter or something. Somebody was like, oh, I'm not crying for these players. They make a lot. And I thought to myself, well, I'm upset for them because I know how hard they work and how much effort they put into this to get where they're at. And this means so much to them, and their shelf life is so small in their careers that, when they lose a year like that, not only do they lose a year, but the things we don't see, the recovery, the rehab, the things that they have to go through, it's crazy. And I feel for them, when they have to, because I've heard that when you tear an ACL or an Achilles, never the same. And the recovery is just, brutal and grinding,
yep.
and you're never quite the same. So I feel for these guys.
So now the next topic I had so far, what do you guys think between the Patriots without Brady as opposed to Brady with Tampa Bay? And I'll give you the stats. So far, Cam has 4 rushing touchdowns, hit 71.4% of his passes, 1 touchdown and 1 interception, where Brady's about 65% with about 450 yards, 3 touchdowns and 3 picks. So, and they're both 1-1. So what do you guys take from this? What do you think was more important at this point, 2 weeks into the season?
Well, Belichick was able to go ahead and cater the offense around Cam. He was very adaptable to it, and obviously that he gets a lot of credit for that. But with Brady, he has a lot more talent available to him when healthy, and especially those receivers, when healthy, they're going to be able to go ahead and provide a lot of weapons that he just needs to get used to. So over the long haul, you may see Tampa Bay, depending on their defense, which seems to be in and out, that might be the key for me.
For me, I go ahead, John.
Oh, I was going to say they haven't had time to gel. It's been 2 weeks. They're 1-1. They lost to the class of the NFC, the Saints. So nothing to scoff at there. The Saints they lost to the Raiders, but I that's a whole nother story why they lost to the Raiders. But the Saints are ultimately the class of the NFC, and the Bucs lost to them on the road. Big deal. They beat the Panthers. It wasn't pretty, but they won.
The Saints got sucked up by the Death Star here in Las Vegas. That's how they lost.
If you want me to go on about it, I think I said before the game, I said they were going to lose because an opening night for a stadium like that, I just think that the Raiders had all the momentum to win that game. And without Michael Thomas,
had the tractor beam and it just sucked the Millennium Falcon right in.
It was just a perfect storm for the Raiders to go out and win. So, and the Saints were with no Michael Thomas.
If you want to go losing to the class of the conference,
I was just going to go there.
Flew across country to Seattle, to Russell Wilson's home, and lost to them on a goal line drive that Seattle just stopped. Meanwhile, Cam's come back and had 4 rushing touchdowns already. He's kind of back to his old Cam. He still has really no receivers on that team. He had better receivers down in Carolina.
Mm-hmm.
Brady now has all the talent. Yes, I do think it's going to take them time to gel, but I think right now Cam is showing in New England that they're doing a lot better overall.
Personally, I'm more impressed with the way the Pats are playing. They look great. And it's a painful sentence to say because as a fan of not only the Giants, but just of the NFL, I can't stand the Patriots. But they look better. Cam looks like vintage Cam. And not to take anything from Tom Brady, but he looks like he's fallen off a cliff a little bit. Not all the way off, but he's definitely slowing down, and you can see it. And that's to be expected, first of all. But you know what? The fact that the Bucs have lost to the Saints, I'm not surprised. But for me, why I would say that I think the Pats look better when you look at who was closer in their game. Now, I love the Seahawks and the Saints. I think they're both fantastic teams, and they're obviously 2 of the best teams in the NFC. And I'm not going to say who's better than the other because they have different strengths. It's just they're just totally different teams. I mean, Drew Brees is one of the best quarterbacks ever, but Russell Wilson's also one of the best mobile quarterbacks ever. And so for me, they're very different in that aspect. And they're running backs too. Chris Carson's more of a bruiser, and then you got Alvin Kamara, who for me is more of he can be a bruiser, but for me, he's a very versatile back, meaning that not only does he do running well, but for me, he's a great pass catching back. So it's very different offenses that they played. But for me, why I like the way the Patriots have been playing, not only does Cam look incredible, the Patriots were this close to beating the Seahawks and being 2-0. Now, they were 1-0 against the Dolphins. That's not impressive. And the Bucs being, going 1-1 against the Panthers is also not impressive. But Cam has looked like he just picked up right where he left off back in, I believe it was 2015 when he was, having his MVP season. He looks like he has not he's not had any issues. And to me, I've been so impressed the way that he's just fit right into that offense. So for me, that's where I'm leaning. this is a storyline, though, I will say I'm very excited to watch throughout the season because Tom Brady has the better weapons, but I will say Cam Newton is looking better as a player itself.
I resent that comment that the Dolphins win was easy because the Pats barely beat us. They were up 14-11 late in the fourth quarter. So they easily beat us. Let's not give them that. They had 14 points late in the fourth quarter, and the Dolphins almost beat the high octane Bills this past week. They almost beat the Bills. They had the lead in the fourth quarter. So the Dolphins were right there with both of those teams. So let's not jump on the Dolphins so quick.
I mean, you can say it like that, but at the same time, the truth is the Patriots were up in this game, the whole time. They were up. It was 14-3 at one point. But just the Patriots just look better. The Dolphins are – you really going to tell me the Dolphins are anything to talk about? They're really not. I mean – and that was also Cam's first game. So I also do give a little credit to both sides. Tom Brady's first game was against the Saints. That was him getting acclimated to a team. Patriots' first game against the Dolphins, they still beat them. So
now I have a question.
Really matters for me.
I have a question for I guess Jerry first. Jared, what do you think about because I've heard this a lot this week, is both guys really looked, I guess, weak in their arm. Breeze and Brady trying to throw the out routes and both essentially getting picked off on plays like that. They've already shown their arms to be diminishing when it comes to throws like that, throws they used to be able to make, and now they're trying those out routes, and corners are dumping them and picking them. As you saw Brady, it happened to him in the playoffs last year, had it happen to him already this season. What do you think about that?
Well, Drew Brees has always not had the strongest arm in the world in the first place. And now you're seeing Father Time coming up, tapping on that shoulder. It's getting closer. I mean, Father Time is undefeated. And I think Father Time in a year that, again, it goes back to lack of preparedness, you're rushing through training camp, the whole 9 yards, what we're dealing with here in 2020. I just think it's a culmination of that. Had you had a longer training camp, more preparedness, maybe you would have seen a little bit different type of schemes that you could throw out there offensively for the two, maybe have more time to prepare. But again, it goes back to Father Time. And I think over the course of the year, we're going to see whether or not that if you're going to be able to make those routes, they're going to be able to hit those routes, or if both coaches have to scheme differently to make it easier for those two to hit their receivers going forward, which could be easily done. I mean, we're now playing in a realm where you don't have to necessarily try all those out passes or long passes and still get those kind of yards, because if you have the right blocking schemes, or if you have the right routes for screen passes, wide receiver screens, could throw anything on the flat, just different ways you can go ahead and camouflage the fact that you don't have the strongest arm in the world. You can still do it. It's just a little bit harder.
Yeah, for me, it just goes back to the non-preseason. I'm not going to say that, it's not their age, because it is. I absolutely agree with Jerry, what you just said about their age. I'm not going to disagree with you. It is 100% a factor. But again, for me, it goes back to the lack of that preseason. Their skills that they obviously have to pick up on their skills again. I think it's a better way to put it. For Brady and for Breeze, I think that's a time where they start really throwing the ball. Maybe just not even necessarily deep, but just throwing it in a game situation, getting their arms loose again, trying to get back to that. They're going to take a couple weeks, and I think if we revisit this in 4 or 5 weeks, like the fourth or fifth week of the season, we're going to be seeing. I'm not saying their primes, of course, but more of what we expect, better passing in those situations, just because their arms are going to be looser. They're going to have had the time to really acclimate to playing at this high level again, and I think they're going to be okay. I'm not going to say that they're going to be their primes, because that would be ridiculous, but I do get the feeling that we're going to kind of see a little bit closer to what we've seen in the past few seasons as they've aged, considerably each year. As they get older each season, we're going to see more like that as opposed to what we're seeing right now, probably after a few weeks.
Yeah, I definitely, I'm not too concerned about either one this year. They're both going to be fine. Both teams are going to do pretty decent. I think the Saints will be better because they just have a better defense overall right now than Tampa. But, it happened to Peyton Manning. We saw him diminish in front of our eyes. He wasn't the same quarterback. It's going to happen eventually to both of those guys if they don't retire first. And we'll just have to wait and see what happens. The Giants, whoever wrote that.
Yeah, JB and I are painfully Giants fans.
But, I mean, I guess not to get on this topic too much, but we saw with Brady in the playoffs last year. It wasn't quite there. The arm strength wasn't quite there. You saw him, get pick six, and that sealed the game against the Titans. Can these teams overcome that? Because ultimately the Saints and the Bucs don't win without those guys. They do not win unless those guys are playing at the top of their games in the playoffs. Can they overcome that? I guess we got to wait and see. To me, right now, your arm's not going to get strong. We saw it with Brady last year in the playoffs. It's not like it got better then. It's not like it got better now. He's older now, and it seems like they're both their arms are just, like you said with Peyton Manning, he fell off a cliff. It seems like they're falling off a cliff. Brady's trying to make throws that he used to be able to make, and he can't make. Breeze is trying to fit into tight windows that he can't fit it into anymore. Not that they're not good quarterbacks, but, precision only takes you so far.
Yeah, but you're talking about, again, they've never had to prepare like this without any games against live defenses. As Jake said earlier, when you're playing against your own guys, it's not the same. You don't get up for scrimmages the same way you do when you play a game on a Sunday. So it's a completely different feel, a different level. Look at the difference from Brady week 1 to week 2. You saw it; he was a lot better. Plus he has all new receivers to work with. So it's a tough thing to be hard on him right now. With that, we have to see as the season goes on.
Yeah, I was just going to say, for me, that's something I want to revisit weeks from now. They've had some time to really acclimate to the regular season. They would have had more than enough time to what would have been they'd be past that time. That's when I would want to revisit it, because then we can say, yes or no. But like I said, they need the time to acclimate. Their arms are probably going to get a little bit looser. I'm not saying that they're going to start unleashing the ball for 60, 70 yards, but I am saying that as their arms get a little bit looser, they're going to have a little bit of an easier time throwing, because they're going to have a little more, a little oomph to their arm now. They're going to have that little something that maybe adds 5-10 yards for them. Just being acclimated to playing a little bit more. That's all.
Yeah. And then the last thing in the NFL, the schedule. So this week was the first week in about 50 years where we had teams that were all on the road week 1 or home, switched to were home and away. But now you have the 49ers who have the uncomfortable trip of having to travel back east 2 weeks in a row. Both games at MetLife Stadium, where the first week they were complaining about the turf and lost Bosa, Mozart, and a bunch of other guys. Is this really, a good way of scheduling when they could have divided those games up later in the year and split them a little bit?
Here is my biggest issue that I'm going to think about, and it's going to be an advantage for JB, you and I as Giants fans. This will work to our advantage. You hear it all the time that players get really tired with the time changes. They're going from the West Coast to the East Coast, so obviously it's different time zones that their bodies have to adjust to. And I've heard players constantly say it usually takes multiple days to really readjust both ways, when they go from the East to the West and vice versa. And so for me, I don't like the scheduling on this. I mean, I like it as a Giants fan. I think it's going to help. But as a fan of the NFL, of someone that just appreciates the game, it's stupid, because when you think about it, they're going to be in MetLife, right? They had to adjust to us. Now they have to go home, readjust to their time zone, and now just a few days later, then come back, readjust to our time zone, and it's going to probably hurt them the week after too, because they're still going to be reeling from all that time change. It's too much for a team that's already banged up as is. It's stupid to me. I think that one of two things should have happened. If they were so intent on having the 49ers do that, they should have let them stay here. Keep them in a hotel or do or work that they only go to they use the practice facilities that the Giants are using as well, and they only use that and then they go to the hotel, and that's the absolute max that they do, or have MetLife two separate, have the two games spread out so the team is not going to be tired, because they are. I'm guaranteeing it now. I'm sure we're going to notice that they're going to be at least a little bit worn down and tired from just having to travel that much.
They could have helped them out by making the Jet game the Thursday night game, week 2,
Sure.
or one of the games a 4:00 game. They're both 1:00 games as well.
Sure.
It's always difficult for a West Coast team to come east and play at 1.
This is true too.
I will say, first of all, John said 1 and 2 Giants. Everyone, he thinks the Giants are going to win. Garoppolo's not playing this week for the Niners, first of all. Second of all, Bosa did not injure his knee because of the turf. He got his knee rolled up on by his own player. The back of his knee got rolled up on. So that wasn't because of the turf. That was just somebody, you see it all the time in football. Somebody rolls up on your ankle or your knee and you get hurt. So that happened to Bosa. So that wasn't necessarily the turf. But Garoppolo got an ankle injury. I don't know if that was necessarily because of the turf, but I think most it probably was because he had a knee problem, and I can't imagine he got rolled up on too. But Bosa did get rolled up on, so I did want to say that. But no Garoppolo, so I think the Giants could potentially pull this one out.
Well, that's a good point by the commenter that they stayed on the East Coast. Yeah.
That's I mean, that takes my point away a little bit, but nonetheless, because they're still traveling from the West Coast to the East Coast, down to Virginia, to West Virginia, back up. It's still a lot of traveling. It's not as much as originally stated, but I still think that's gonna have some impact on them nonetheless.
I would imagine they probably use the Washington football team's practice facility because that's relatively close to there. That's not that far from there.
Depends on where in West Virginia they are,
Yeah.
But I would think that if they were able to stay in West Virginia, why they could have just stayed in the New York area. There's plenty of places to practice. That just makes no sense, And
I don't know.
The rule was you had to put it
makes no sense.
But yeah, I thought it was just a horrible job of the NFL scheduling the way it was. I disagree that the Giants are going to go 1 and 2. I mean, we had to play 3 of the toughest defenses in the NFL. Now we're without Barkley, which hurts because he's a great young player who just can't stay healthy. I think we're 0 and 3, and I think it's another long year, which I knew before we started this year.
Mm-hmm.
But I think me and Jake are going to be, hoping somebody else wins at some point. What's going on in baseball, John? Unless you have anything to add to that.
I think you guys made up some great points. Go ahead, John.
Did you want to talk fantasy, or did you want to talk fantasy after the MLB?
I'm going to say,
why don't we do?
We're not going to skip it.
No, we'll do MLB and then we'll do fantasy.
All right, yeah. I want to make sure we touch on fantasy. We have a lot to get to.
Fantasy.
So with the MLB, I'm curious. There's 8 teams on each side that technically make it. They're going to start off these series with 3-game series. Which team is most susceptible to getting upset, you guys think, in their 3-game series? Because if I'm a Dodgers fan, I'm worried because a 3-game series, anybody can get knocked out. It's not a 7 where you have a chance for Clayton Kershaw to pitch 3 times, 1, 4, and 7. It's a 3-game series, and you easily, like JB always says with baseball, one bad bounce can cost you the game in baseball. One bad bounce, between somebody's legs or anything like that. That's how baseball works. So a 3-game series is nothing, and anybody can win. So I guess, JB, who do you think is most susceptible to getting upset in these weird, tiny little 3-game series?
First of all, I'm glad it's a 3-game series because the wild card game's been 1 game, and I mean the Nationals could thank the World Series on it, for a weird bounce last year. I'm going to say the Yankees just because of the fact that we haven't been able to stay healthy, and I think that's a huge problem in a short series. You need to have your best players on the field, and if you're hurt and you're not playing, you're in trouble.
I hate to agree with you, JB, but I do. I mean, the Yankees have – I'm so used to talking about the Giants being terrible. Gotta switch gears. No, the Yankees, their biggest enemy this season continued to be the injury bug. Still haven't seen Severino pitch, which hurts. Paxton, I believe they said, was out for the season. It's just killing us. I mean, that's the other thing I'm nervous about is our starting pitching. Our pitching is good. I'm not, Garrett Cole's looked great. Tanaka's looked pretty good. Happ has looked pretty good. But with that said, those guys go on hot and cold streaks. Garrett Cole is the only one that I don't really generally see hot and cold streaks. He's usually, even when he's bad, so to speak, he's still pretty solid, on the mound. But for the other two guys, that's my other concern, besides their injuries, which I'm always constantly concerned about. Happ can be a great pitcher at times. He can be absolutely lights out. But there's other times where he's going to give up like 10 runs in an inning, and that kills the game completely. And Tanaka, not necessarily as much, but I do see that from Tanaka still. Tanaka definitely has had his share of bad outings where, he looked good previously, but when he comes into the next game, he's not looking so hot. He can't get his stuff on the right, in the right spot. He's missing. He's whatever. So that's my other concern. Between the injuries and that, I'm a little worried about my Yankees. I hate to say.
Jerry, who do you think is most susceptible?
I think for me, it's going to be someone like the Oakland Athletics, who has played well all year. They've been on a roll. Obviously, they've had really no contenders in the West out here. I mean, Houston is disappointed, or I think probably it's more up here than it is talent-wise because everybody's been on their case because they kind of did not play by the rules. But I will say this, that I think of any team that might be upset early on, I think it's going to be Oakland. I just think that they do have a nice talent base, but they've had some key injuries in the past couple of weeks. So I think that might be something that they might have to go ahead and overcome, and I'm not sure they're going to be able to do so.
Oh, we're losing you, John.
Wow, the new John is on.
I'm back.
I will say, John, thoughts on the Devontae Freeman signing, because I see your comments. And by the way, thanks everyone for comments. Been great, doing a great job. I think it's a good signing, but because when you're in need, you got to go ahead and sign whoever you can off the street. So,
John, you still there?
That is a good.
There you go.
Yeah, I'm still here. That's a good signing. Dion Lewis isn't really, he was a product of the Pats. Wayne Gallman isn't really, a big deal. So Freeman he went to a Super Bowl with Atlanta clearly. So he has some success. He's been there. So not that the Giants are going to get there, but he at least gives them, a chance. And, Danny Jones needs that. He needs something in the backfield. Clearly he's not going to do it all by himself. We saw that against Chicago.
Needs consistency there.
We need an offensive line. We have no hope this year. We're like, if we get 4-12, we've done well. There's not much to say. Barkley, great young player. If he stayed healthy, it was still a bad pick because we don't have the line to protect him.
But better with him.
Yeah.
And back to
baseball.
Yeah. So that's basically, I don't have a whole lot with baseball. I mean, everything's kind of like, it's not wrapped up, but it's basically wrapped up, and the playoffs haven't started yet. So it's like an in-between. So that's really all I got for baseball right now until the playoffs start in about a week or so.
That's when it gets exciting.
Who's your MVP for the season so far, John?
I don't know. I mean, I really don't. I don't know. I don't really have a guy right now. What about you? I don't really have a guy personally in mind right now. I did earlier, but I really don't now. I did a couple weeks ago, but not now.
What the guy of the Orioles you were saying that you had originally thought?
But then he got hurt, and so he hasn't played since. So that was my MVP, Santander, back when he was playing really well, but then he got hurt. Hasn't played since. He was my dark horse MVP.
Yeah, I right now in the NL, I got to say Mookie Betts. He's had a phenomenal year. AL, I don't really have somebody in mind just yet. A couple of guys that could be, but I think Mookie Betts in the NL to me is a clear choice. What about you guys? Anybody else?
I'm going to throw out there Manny Machado.
Yeah,
and then Jose Abreu. would probably be for right now, I think, in the AL.
And Abreu's really come along. Abreu's really come a long way from some of the sluggish years that he had with the Sox to now to his team being basically, the best team in baseball, like record-wise, right around there. He had some sluggish years, and he's really helped put it together, and that team is finally on the right track. So that's good to see that.
Don't sleep on Marcell Ozuna of Atlanta.
Yes. He's had a great year as well. There's been, Atlanta's a scary team. They really are. I could see them making a lot of noise in the playoffs.
Should be fun. Yeah, I don't have too much in terms of MVPs. Like I said, it's been a weird year. I agree with what you guys said. It's just like, okay, this person's the clear cut, definite guy I'm looking at. I'm not getting that.
Yeah, so like I said, baseball is kind of in that weird area where who's going to the playoffs, but so nothing's really happening, so to speak, because everything is wrapping up and kind of wrapped up. And at least like in the AL, who's going to the playoffs. So it's not really like a race to get that final spot. Everything's kind of determined, just kind of seeding now.
Well, do we want to talk about fantasy football? I know, John, you're very excited about that.
Please kick us off, JB. I encourage you to.
Well, I mean, it's been a great season.
2 is your favorite number.
Yes, I'm a lovely 0-2. Drew Brees had a great week. Who was it? Hill, I think, not Hill. Fuller had a nice 0-point game for me this week. Guys are really performing well. Both in daily fantasy and in our league. I have to say, I've been wrong so far all along, but not taking McCaffrey first so far has been a good move.
JB,
first pick.
And Barkley, you skipped Barkley too.
JB, right. I have really good news for you. You and I are both 0-2, and I will get into why I'm 0-2 in a second. But JB, we have very good news. One of us is winning our first game this week.
Nice.
We both can't lose unless we by some miracle we tie.
Tie's coming up.
Now, but yeah, I'm 0 as well. But here's what I'm going to say. Last week, I had relatively speaking, a very good week. I just pulled a bad matchup. I mean, my opponent scored 177, most points. Everybody else, with the exception of one other person, I would have won my game. For me, last week, just a bad matchup. I had a solid week. Looking at my team as we speak, Kamara, absolutely monster week with 38 points. I mean, geesh. I mean, talk about a dominant performance. My only real bad person right now was Darius Slayton on my flex because I had Cortland Sutton. And for those of you who have no idea what's happened in the NFL season, Cortland Sutton's out for the season, so that hurts. But John, I know you have something to say. So what is it? What is it that we know you're just dying to tell us?
So the current, at least one of the members of Journey with the Jays is representing the fantasy league. It started out Journey with the Jays versus the fans. And at least one of us is representing Journey with the Jays proudly. I'm the only one of us with a win.
I appreciate that, John.
Well, hey, like I said, one of us will have a win this week between you and myself. So at least 2 of the Journey of the Jays will have a win by the end of the week.
I'm current number 1 seed, 2-0, easy 2 wins, best team currently in the league. So at least I'm representing the Journey, proudly. I can't say the same about you guys, but you'll get there.
For now.
I don't know. The Mets always used to start out like 2-1, and how many good years did they have? So I'm not worried after 2 weeks. We'll see how the season ends.
Yeah, I mean, if anybody has any fantasy questions that happens to be watching right now, feel free to ask. But
so, Jerry, you said you run a fantasy show. So talk to us a little bit, I guess, about fantasy and I guess week 3. Waiver wires already happened. Today's waiver wire. So, but what are, I guess, some of your expectations this week for some of the guys that you have for daily fantasy or on your teams? I don't know what your fantasy outlook.
Well, I've got two
looks
teams
like,
right now. One's 2-0, and I was fortunately able to go ahead and get as a backup in my league as a keeper league still counts, and that is Aaron Rodgers, who's carried my team on that so far. So it's carried to 2 nice wins, and I actually have a decent lineup there. I lost on my other team, my ESPN league, because of Saquon Barkley went down. That was pretty much the difference right there in a nutshell. So actually for me, I'm in that panic mode because like you said, you got to search the waiver wires. You got to see if you can try and make trades. I had the fortunate ability to be able in my draft to select an extra quarterback. So I've got multiple quarterbacks on my roster just in case, like a break glass in case of emergency. Well, that emergency for me is now. So I'm actually just on the hunt, just trying to hunt down any kind of trade I can to go ahead and get a quality running back on my roster because it's hurting right now. I'm feeling it when you lose your overall number 1 pick, and that just really hurts. I mean, in many leagues he was an overall number 1. For me, he was a number 2 pick, but right there, yeah, it really hurts. It really hurts a lot.
Yeah, he went number 2 in our league as well, I believe. Right?
Yeah,
Yes.
McCaffrey went first, and whoever the person who's got him in my leagues hurting as well. So
I think he went 3 in our league. I hate to cut you off.
He went
3 because it went
3
Zeke,
in our league.
McCaffrey, Saquon.
Okay,
I got the 1 pick, and I took Zeke because
Smart
I had
man.
a feeling McCaffrey was going to have a down year. Wasn't expecting an injury, but
yeah. Well, you got 2 of the top
Barkley.
3 running backs that are out on the shelf for several weeks at the very least. And in Barkley's case, he's gone for this year.
This
so
season.
you got to basically hustle right now. This is your time when you got to go ahead and either hopefully have some backups. But if you don't think you have the quality backups, you make the moves now because the more you wait, the more weeks you wait, the more you're going to be able to get hurt by it. The less opportunities you will have. The trade deadlines go away really quickly. The waiver wire, the choices on there get slimmer and slimmer. So if you're not able to go ahead and act now, you may not be able to act later.
My only thing is, if there's handcuffs out there, guys like, for example, I always think of Minnesota. If you can get Dalvin Cook's
Madison
handcuff,
Alexander
Madison, guys like that, just go out and get them if you have a guy that you're willing to drop on your roster right now, because guys seem to be dropping like flies, and that handcuff may become really helpful, especially in the way the season's going. Normally, I'd say handcuffs are nice, but they're a little bit of a risk. This season, I'm saying handcuffs are almost a premium because they're going to become the starting back, it seems like, within the next few weeks with ease.
Yeah.
One thing that I want to emphasize, because you guys are talking about being the team with Barkley or with McCaffrey or with Sutton or with guys like that. But what about teams that are on the opposite end? Say the teams that are 2-0 and that are looking to take advantage of guys like you that had Barkley. So in my league, the guy I faced beat me this week. He had a big week. He beat me. He had Barkley. Barkley went down. He only had 2 running backs on his roster going into that game. And I told him before the game, you need to have more than 2 or you're going to be in trouble if injuries happen. He said, well, injuries aren't going to happen. Sure enough, Barkley went out. Well, once that happened, I messaged him the next day and I said, hey, I have one of the best waiver claims. I'm going to get Mike Davis. Do you want Mike Davis? So I'm trying to take advantage of him right then and there.
Mm-hmm.
As soon as I saw Barkley went down, I looked at the waiver wire and I said, okay, Mike Davis is the top option. I'm going to get him. He's a starter for 4 to 6 weeks. And what you have to do is if you get a Mike Davis and you're in that position, don't hesitate. Do not hesitate to sell Mike Davis because you don't know we don't know what he's going to do. He had 6 catches, 78 yards, I believe. In relief of McCaffrey. Great job. But if he has a bad game this week in his 4 to 6 weeks that he's going to be the starter, his value plummets because everybody's already on the edge about him because you're only getting him temporarily as of right now. So sell him before this week happens.
Absolutely.
Because they only have him 4 to 6 weeks. So you have to get something out of him. Don't try and get Julio Jones or Mahomes or something because that's just stupid. You're not going to get it. But get something reasonable And that's what I would say, do. Reach out to the guys that are in trouble first and foremost, or the women that are in trouble in the league. And reach out to them and try and take advantage and get something back from them that you may need. That's my advice. Because we're thinking of,
I always say sell high, buy low. Right now, you can sell a guy like Mike Davis real high because you can say, look, I can guarantee you a starting running back for the next 6 weeks, and you might need it. And you might be able to pull out even a half decent flex player for yourself, which for you might be a huge move, and you're giving them a starting running back. You could win a league with a trade like that. I mean, who knows? If you get a guy, like even a guy like, for me, I just picked off the waiver this week that if he's available in your league, I say go get him. Russell Gage of the Falcons. He's probably my flex player. You could easily get a guy, with that kind of talent right now that has that value. If you trade a guy like Mike Davis, you could absolutely do that with no problem. And like I said, it could win you a league. You don't know.
And don't panic if you're 0-2. I mean, plenty of time. Don't worry about the first 2 weeks. It means nothing. Just means you got to make sure you make better decisions going forward.
Exactly.
And there's going to be two things that I recommend. I like to play when I talk to somebody about a trade, I like to play the manipulation card. I like to turn the tables. I like that. I enjoy that. It's fun for me. So two things that I would recommend saying, if you're going to offer a Mike Davis for 4 to 6 weeks. First of all, you say, you need him. And if they say, I'll get McCaffrey back after 4 to 6, you just tell them, your team might be dead by the time McCaffrey comes back. Mm-hmm. So can you really withstand not having a guy for 4 to 6 weeks? Because you can have McCaffrey, but if you're out of the playoffs, not going to make it, what does it matter? That's the first thing that I would say. Second thing I would say with a guy like that you're trying to sell them, tell them, this is what I've told the people that I'm trying to sell it to. Tell them that there's a chance that when McCaffrey comes back after 6 weeks, 4 to 6 weeks, try and emphasize the 6. That way it sounds like they'll get more Davis. Emphasize that and tell them there's a chance McCaffrey gets shut down. Because if the Panthers are 1-7, are you going to really bring McCaffrey back when you're missing the playoffs? Your franchise guy? No, probably not. You're probably going to shut him down, or at least emphasize that they might shut him down. So you might get the potential of an entire season of Mike Davis. Sell that to them. If you sell things like that to them, you kind of flip the script. You might be able to get what you want out of them. Not Mahomes, but you might be able to get, a guy that you're looking for, like a Ridley or something crazy like that. That's just how I operate, and I like to operate and kind of, turn the tables on my opponents.
Interesting. You know what we did miss, though? We missed, condolences to the Chicago Bears family and the Sayers family. Gail Sayers passed away today, 77 years old. We did miss that when we were covering football. One of the greatest running backs of all time.
Is he top 5 for you guys?
I have a problem with rankings you have to try and compare guys against generations, and that's always really hard for me. Yeah. So in his generation, of course. But if you want to compare him to a guy like, Bo Jackson, it's a little unfair because different times, comparing a guy, like Zeke right now, who's one of the best in our game at the moment. It's hard. I mean, at his for his time, 100% of all time, it's really hard to do because, like I said, it's very different players from different eras.
And it's hard when you don't see the guy play week to week. He was before I started watching football. So it's hard for me to sit, and just watch film and say, okay, he's one of the best. I was lucky enough to see Barry and Emmett. To me, they were the two best I got to see. Bo would have probably been up there if he didn't get hurt. I think he was tremendously talented, but the fact that he didn't get to play very long is why he's not up there. But it's hard for me to go back further than that because I haven't seen him play. So, tape doesn't justify how good they were or weren't.
Yeah, I agree. That's kind of what I was getting at, so I agree.
He would be top 5 for me. I know he only played about 6 seasons, but he'd be top 5 for me. Along with Barry on there, and obviously Walter Payton on there. I don't know. I wouldn't personally put Emmett on there. I know Emmett was great, but I personally just wouldn't put Emmett on there if I made my own list for that. I would have Jim Brown on there. So I would put Gale Sayers top 5 personally.
Well, that's kind of the problem right there. I mean, you don't have Emmitt Smith, but we're comparing him to Jim Brown, which I'm not necessarily disagree. It's just different generations, which is a little tough. That's all.
Yep.
All right. Is there anything else, guys?
Just thank you for Mark Berry from AMG Music for the music for the show. The Charlotte Bats for the hat I have on. And trying to get either an expansion team or relocated team into MLB over in Charlotte. Rich Curdy, who'll probably be joining us in a few weeks on the show for a few minutes. So he sent me the hat. I have it on so you guys can see. Charlotte Bats. Anybody else?
I was curious because you don't normally have your old hat on.
Yeah, well, I have a bunch.
You normally have your old hat.
Yeah, I got a bunch. I'll mix it up throughout the shows, but yeah, I got this the other day, and I told him I'd wear it tonight for him. I know they're working hard to get a team down there in Charlotte. He's actually coming up tomorrow on the program, so it'll be out tomorrow. You guys could listen on the Believe Network and hear what they're doing to bring the team to Charlotte. It sounds like it's a good move for MLB, but we'll see what happens.
Yeah, that's awesome. Anything else, anybody? Anybody else have anything before we sign off?
Nope. Thank you, fans, for all your comments and checking in. We appreciate, as always, as we say every week, we appreciate all the support that you give us. We don't do this without the fans, obviously. So we appreciate all the fans commenting and listening and everything.
All right. Well, I think that's it. So unless anybody has anything else to say, again, thank you to all the fans, and we'll see you guys next week.
Go Heat.
Oh.